They told me the pay was good because nobody else wanted the shift. I worked maintenance on the midnight shift at a remote train maintenance depot in the northern Ural region, far from anything resembling civilization. Station 46 was little more than a collection of steel buildings, a few flickering mercury lights, and 4 massive train tunnels carved into the mountain like black mouths. Only 2 workers manned it at night, one in the control office, and the other, me, on the floor doing inspection and repair. That week, the other guy called in sick, and they offered me double pay to cover the station alone. It wasn't the first time I'd been there by myself. The cold, the dark, I'd gotten used to it. But something was different that week. The air felt tighter. The shift started normally. I did the rounds, noted which cars needed work, replaced a fuse on a signal line. Around 1:15 a.m., the radio static started. Our radios weren't state-of-the-art, but they never failed inside the station. That night, mine went to snow and stayed there. Not even the emergency channel was responsive. I tried rebooting the system in the control room. Everything looked normal, until I saw the security feed. One of the external cameras showed something that didn't make sense. Tunnel 3 was supposed to be empty, but there was a freight car in it. A single, dark car, unmarked, no power, sitting about 30 feet into the tunnel. I double-checked the log. Nothing was scheduled for Tunnel 3. It had been closed for maintenance for 2 weeks. I tried to call Central Command, but the phone lines were dead too. Maybe a train had been rerouted without notice. I put on my coat and flashlight and headed toward Tunnel 3. The snow had started to fall outside, soft at first, then heavier. My boots crunched through the icy ground as I approached the entrance. The light from my headlamp flicked off the thick concrete walls of the tunnel. The car was real, sitting still and silent like some beast in hibernation. I approached cautiously. No ID numbers, no graffiti, no tracks in the snow behind it. It looked like it had been dropped there from the sky. Inside the tunnel, the temperature dropped sharply. My breath came in thick white plumes. I circled the freight car. No doors, just a welded hull with a strange symbol etched faintly into the rusted side. I ran my glove over it. It was cold, too cold. When I turned to walk away, I saw something else. Footprints, human footprints, small, bare feet. They trailed from the end of the car and led deeper into the darkness of the tunnel. I wasn't supposed to go far into the tunnels alone, especially not ones under maintenance, but I had to know. I followed the prints for about 15 feet. Then they just stopped. No return path. Just a final pair of feet pointing inward, as if the person had simply vanished mid-step. I stood still, the only sound my own heartbeat and the slow drip of water from somewhere above. Then I heard the clang. It echoed from behind me, from the direction of the freight car. I spun around. Nothing. But the car's rear latch, one that hadn't existed earlier, was now slightly ajar. I backed out of the tunnel, heart racing. I shut down the control panel that fed power to that section, sealed the tunnel, and logged an unauthorized vehicle report manually. I told myself I'd deal with it in the morning. Back inside the control room, the cameras began glitching. Screens flickered, then stabilized, except for one. The feed from the interior of the break room, where no one had been since my shift started, showed a figure standing still in the far corner, just outside the range of the light. I stared at the screen. The figure didn't move. It was either turned away from the camera or wearing something over its face. I rushed to the break room. Empty. But something was off. The air smelled different, burned hair and iron. I checked every corner, nothing. But when I looked at the camera feed again, the figure was still there, standing in the corner I had just inspected. I unplugged the feed. At around 3 a.m., the power surged. All the overhead lights flickered and went dead for about 10 seconds, then slowly hummed back to life. In that moment of darkness, I heard something moving in the vent above the control office. Slow, deliberate dragging sounds like claws against metal. I didn't move. I just sat still and waited. Then the sound stopped. I should have left then, but the nearest town was over an hour away through frozen forest, and I had no vehicle. I was stranded. I decided to wait it out in the server room. It was shielded, quiet, and had an emergency power supply. I barricaded the door with a rolling cabinet and tried to keep myself calm. I checked the log files again on the offline system. That's when I saw it. A new entry. 0321, Tunnel 3 opened. There was no scheduled access, no one else was on site. I scanned the logs further. 0327, entity released. No author, no system signature. Just those 2 words in red text. I didn't understand. Our systems weren't capable of logging phrases like that. We had codes for everything. Track errors, power faults, security breaches. But nothing like this. Then the server began to overheat. I heard the fans whirring loudly, the temperature gauge rising in real time. Smoke began to seep from behind the console. I shut the whole unit down. And then I heard it. Something breathing just outside the barricaded door. Long, slow, animalistic breaths. Too heavy to be human, too rhythmic to be coincidence. I covered my mouth and waited. The breathing stopped after maybe 2 minutes. I stayed in that room until the first gray light of dawn began to break through the ventilation slot. I emerged slowly. The station was dead quiet. I returned to the control room. Tunnel 3's freight car was gone. No tracks, no sign it had ever been there. But in its place, right where it had been parked, was a symbol etched into the concrete, the same symbol that had been on the side of the car. When the day shift arrived, I tried to explain, but all logs had reset. The cameras had no footage past midnight. The red entries in the logs were gone. They chalked it up to fatigue, stress, even hallucination. I resigned that day. 2 months later, I got a call from one of the day workers who'd taken over my duties. His voice was trembling. He said a new car had shown up. Same tunnel, same symbol. Then the line went dead. He was never seen again. I searched through old documents trying to understand what I had seen. In Soviet-era maintenance logs, I found a reference to Tunnel Unit 3, do not activate without approval from Central 13. The file was labeled as decommissioned, no further notes. Another document from the 1970s mentioned unauthorized freight returns and organic residue found in sealed units. Something was transported in those cars, something not meant to be seen. Some nights I still dream about it. The sound of breathing in the vents, the bare footprints that ended in nothing, that feeling of being watched from the edge of light. I don't work nights anymore. I never believed in ghosts. I believed in exhaustion, in tricks of the mind, in the way shadows stretch and shift under dim lights. I believed in the brain's uncanny ability to fill in the blanks when it's sleep-deprived and alone. But after what happened in the winter of 2018, I no longer believe those explanations. It started with a job posting, a night shift attendant at a remote gas station just outside a tiny town in Alberta, Canada. I'd lost my previous job, fallen behind on rent, and was running out of options. So when I saw the listing, low pay, long hours, but immediate hire, I applied without hesitation. It didn't matter that it was in the middle of nowhere. I figured it would be quiet, easy money. The station was located on a stretch of old highway barely used anymore, ever since the newer express route had been built 10 years ago. This place mostly served truckers, lost tourists, or the occasional local too stubborn to change their routine. The first night went as expected. Quiet, cold, lonely. The store itself was a standard setup. One entrance, a register counter, some snack aisles, and a row of refrigerated drinks in the back. Security cameras blinked silently above each corner. A small office with a cot sat behind the register, where I could nap during downtime. By the third night, I'd memorized every inch of the place. I began bringing books, music, anything to stay awake. There was no signal that far out, and the Wi-Fi barely worked. Time seemed to stretch, slower than I'd ever experienced. But then, on my fifth night, something shifted. Around 3:13 a.m., I heard the front door chime. Surprising, no headlights had come down the road. I looked up from the register, but no one was there. I stepped around the counter, scanned the store. Nothing. I checked the door. locked. No breeze, no sign it had moved. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe the sensor was faulty. I returned to my seat. Less than 10 minutes later, the chime rang again. I stood immediately, this time walking the entire store, every aisle, the coolers, the restroom, nothing. That night, I barely blinked. The next shift, I made sure to review the security footage. Rewinding back to 3:13 a.m., I watched as the camera showed the door swing open slowly, on its own. No one entered. No wind. Just the door opening and closing, the chime echoing into emptiness. I told myself the hydraulic arm might be faulty. Maybe the cold made the metal contract. Plausible. Except that door had a locking mechanism. I checked it again. The deadbolt had been fully engaged. The footage didn't make sense. The following night, the chime rang once more. This time at 2:44 a.m., the exact time I was halfway through a cup of instant coffee. I froze. I checked the door, still locked. That night, I unplugged the chime sensor. The next few nights were uneventful, quiet again. I started to relax, until the night I noticed something new. One of the drink fridge doors was ajar. I could see the cold mist curling out from inside. I knew I hadn't opened it. I hadn't even been to the back. I walked over, hand resting on the cold glass, and pushed it shut. The moment it clicked closed, the fluorescent lights above flickered. Just once, then again. Then they went out completely, plunging the store into utter black. The backup generator kicked on less than a minute later, humming like an old beast awakening. The lights returned, though dimmer now. The moment they did, I noticed something on the floor in front of the drink fridge. It was a footprint, a single wet print, bare, human, toes splayed, and it was facing me. I should have left, I know that now. But at the time, I chalked it up to a melted ice spill. Maybe a delivery guy had been barefoot, unlikely in that temperature, but I didn't want to believe anything else. A few days later, I received a call from my supervisor. Said a customer had filed a complaint. They said I'd been standing outside the store for over an hour, staring at the woods. The problem was I never left the store. The cameras confirmed it. I was at the register the entire time. But when I reviewed the exterior footage, my heart stopped. There was something standing outside the window. Pale, unmoving, just out of reach of the light. It wasn't me. Its proportions were off. Too tall, its arms long, fingers dangling at thigh level. No features, just standing there, staring in. The footage ended abruptly, cut to static. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I sat on the cot with the lights on, a bat in hand. Then came the knocking. It was subtle at first, like a bird hitting the glass, then louder, rhythmic, persistent, coming from the drink fridge. I approached hesitant, heart in my throat. The glass was fogged, nothing visible. I slowly opened the door, empty. Cold air hit my face, nothing inside. Then I turned around and saw the security monitor. A figure was standing in aisle 3. I bolted around the corner, empty. Back to the monitor, now aisle 4. I ran again, empty. Back to the monitor, aisle 5. It was playing with me, or I was losing my mind. I began leaving the store lights on full time, slept in small bursts during the day, kept music on all night. Anything to drown out the silence. One morning, after a particularly hellish shift, I returned to the cot to rest before the next shift. When I awoke that afternoon, there were scratches on my forearm. 3 long red lines, shallow but burning. I had no pets, no sharp edges on the cot. I couldn't explain it. My supervisor called again, this time serious. He said a delivery driver arrived to restock the shelves and found the store empty, the lights off, the cameras disabled. Said he walked inside and saw someone sleeping behind the counter, but when he got close, the person vanished. Just gone, dissolved into the shadows. I checked the logs. The system had gone offline from 2:13 to 3:26 a.m., the same window every night something happened. The next shift, I brought a camera of my own, not connected to the system, a standalone DSLR with a motion trigger. I pointed it down the main aisle, set it to record when it sensed movement. At 3:09 a.m., it activated. I reviewed the footage the next day, frame by frame, and at precisely 3:13, it captured something. In the middle of the aisle stood a figure, thin, emaciated, bald, its skin gray, stretched tight over bone, hollow sockets where eyes should be, and its head was tilted as if curious. The timestamp flickered, then froze. When the video resumed, the figure was right up to the lens, staring into it. I quit that night, left my keys, my gear, everything. I drove straight until I saw sunlight, until gas stations started looking normal again. I called my supervisor the next day, said I wasn't coming back. He didn't ask why. I think he already knew. A few months later, I saw a local news story. The station had burned down, cause unknown. No injuries. It had been closed for renovations. They found something buried beneath the foundation, something old, human bones, dozens of them, no markers, no records. The property was once the site of a residential school in the 1950s, a place where unspeakable things happened. The gas station had been built over the old dormitories. No one talked about it, but now I understand. It wasn't just a haunting, it was a memory. A scar on the land itself, repeating its pain night after night, crying out to be seen. Sometimes, late at night, I still dream of aisle 3, and something staring back. I always thought the scariest thing about working nights would be the silence. Turns out, it's the things that break it. In 2019, I worked security at a cryogenics research facility in northern Nevada. The facility, owned by a tech medical startup nobody had heard of, was built into a mountainside. It was remote, cold, and heavily funded. I never questioned why. I needed the paycheck. That job paid well, and they didn't ask for much in return. Just stay awake, watch the monitors, and do perimeter walks every 2 hours. It sounded easy. It was for a while. The facility had 3 underground levels. The first was administration, empty after 6 p.m. The second was medical and research, sealed off unless you had high clearance. I didn't. And the third was preservation. That's where the storage units were, long rows of steel cylinders, each one containing a body or brain suspended in cryonic stasis. There were over 50 units when I started, all with names, all with tags. The first few weeks were uneventful. Boring even. I'd bring books, podcasts, anything to kill time. Occasionally I'd see a fox or mountain lion on the outdoor cameras. Rarely a supply truck would arrive after hours. But mostly I was alone with the hum of the lights and the low thrum of machines doing work I didn't understand. Then came February. I started noticing strange fluctuations in the temperature logs. The cryo floor was kept at a constant, under 96 degrees C, monitored by multiple fail-safes. But the logs began showing inconsistencies, barely noticeable at first. Half a degree here, a full degree there. Then one night I walked the floor and noticed condensation on the outer rim of pod number 27. That shouldn't have been possible. I noted it, reported it in the logbook, but no one followed up. The next night, the same pod had a thin sheen of frost, only on the outside, like breath on glass. I looked at the nameplate, Dr. Adrian H. Kessler, date of preservation, 1979. The file listed him as a theoretical physicist and founder of some now defunct defense project. His body had been preserved for future reanimation, according to the log. He died of a heart attack at age 54. Nothing unusual, except for one line in the archive. Do not alter preservation parameters under any circumstances. Strange, but the facility had all kinds of eccentric rules. Some pods had custom temperature settings, others were designated off-limits. Pod 27 had 3 red tags on it, more than any other. I made a note to ask my supervisor. I never got the chance. 2 nights later, I lost video feed on the cryo level. All 6 cameras went offline at 2:31 a.m. No storm, no signal loss, just black. I went down to check, armed with nothing but my flashlight and keycard. As soon as the elevator doors opened to the cryo floor, the temperature hit me, warmer than it should have been. My breath didn't even fog. The hallway lights were on but dimmed, emergency mode. I stepped inside, the air felt thick, wet, like a greenhouse. As I moved past the first row of pods, I saw moisture pooling on the floor. Water. The frost from the tanks was melting. I approached pod number 27. The glass was fogged. I wiped it with my sleeve and jumped back. There were handprints on the inside, as if someone had pressed both palms against the glass, fingers splayed, smudged down. No alarms had triggered, no breach detected. But I could see the interior temperature, -110°, rising. Then came the sound. It started low, like metal groaning under strain, then higher pitched, a scraping like nails dragged across steel. I turned and scanned the room. Nothing moved, but I swear I heard breathing, not my own. I backed away, returned to the elevator and hit the button repeatedly until the doors closed. I told myself I was tired, hallucinating, maybe a gas leak, maybe a prank. The next morning I filed a full report and handed it directly to admin. They promised to investigate, but when I returned the following night, the cameras were still down. Pod number 27 was still fogged, and the handprints were gone. Instead, something else was scratched into the frost. "Stay below." At first I thought someone on staff had done it. A sick joke, but the cameras should have caught it, had they been working. That night I sat at my desk and watched the monitors, even though half of them were static. Around 3:04 a.m., I felt a vibration, just a slight tremor, like a heavy door closing. Then the lights flickered, only once. I stood up, walked to the hallway monitor and flipped through the feeds. One of the upper-level cameras caught a glimpse of motion, a shadow disappearing down the stairwell. No one should have been there. I opened the security log, no entries, no keycard access recorded. I checked the time, 3:13 a.m. I grabbed my flashlight and followed. I moved slowly down the stairwell step by step. No sound, no echo. The cryo floor lights were now completely out. Only my flashlight cut through the dark. I reached the end of the stairs and stepped into the corridor. All the pod lights were blinking red. A low, steady alarm was droning, something I hadn't heard before, an internal alert. I checked the control panel beside the wall. It displayed an error I'd never seen. Unspecified release, Zone 3. Zone 3 was where pod number 27 was stored. I turned the corner and froze. The pod was open, the glass cover lay shattered in shards on the ground. Frost covered the floor around it. The preservation fluid had drained out, evaporated in a pool of ice. And the body was gone. No cleanup crew, no sign of containment. Just the pod split open like a broken egg. A trail of wet footprints led away from it, barefoot, human. I followed the trail slowly. The prints went straight down the aisle, then stopped, completely, as if whatever had left them had disappeared into thin air. That's when I heard the whispering. Not voices exactly, more like electrical noise, like static but shaped into rhythm, pulsing from the walls, vibrating through the floor. It felt alive. I turned and ran, back up the stairs, through the silent upper levels, into the safety of the office. I slammed the door behind me and locked it. That night, I didn't move. I didn't sleep. The lights flickered constantly like the building was breathing. In the morning, I handed in my resignation, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. I started researching Kessler. There wasn't much, just old files, scans of government records, redacted military documents. Then I found something buried in an online archive. A declassified interview with Dr. Adrian Kessler from 1976. He spoke about consciousness transfer, artificial memory loops, and cellular reanimation. He claimed that cryopreservation was only half the equation, that consciousness could be made to survive cold death, trapped but aware. He'd volunteered to be the test subject. He believed he could wake himself once enough heat returned to the brain. I don't know how true it was, but someone or something did wake up. 3 weeks after I left, I saw a news report. The facility suffered a fire. Electrical fault, they said. No survivors. Security logs lost. Bodies unrecoverable. Except one. Kessler's pod was never found. Officials blamed the heat, said the pod was vaporized. But that doesn't make sense. The cryo chambers were sealed with triple reinforced titanium. Nothing short of demolition-grade explosives could destroy one entirely, unless it was opened. Since then I've changed my name, moved across the country. I don't work nights anymore, but sometimes around 3:13 a.m., I wake up cold, covered in sweat, and I hear it again, that whispering static. And once, not long ago, I found a smudge on the inside of my bedroom window. A handprint, and below it written in frost, "Stay below." And so it ends. A night that started as just another quiet shift turned into a nightmare that never truly went away. We often think night work is only about silence and solitude, but sometimes behind the cold air and dark halls, something else is awake, something waiting, something that should have never been disturbed. For those of you who work the night shift, be careful. It's not just sleep you're fighting. It's what might be watching, in the dark, when the world believes it's safe to rest, because when the world sleeps, not everything awake is human.